The barn sounded tired, like it had been listening to hard things for a long time. Hinges cried, boards breathed, dust moved low as a river, curling in the lamplight that slipped through split planks and nail holes. You could smell horses, straw, and the kind of fear that hides its face but never leaves the room. Men stood shoulder to shoulder, hats pulled down, boots whirring the floor. They didn't look at one another much. Didn't need to. Everybody knew what the stacks and the rope rails meant. The summer sun beat the roof outside, hot enough to bake clay. Yet in there, the air felt cold, the way a church can feel cold when the preacher reads from the hard parts. A girl waited on that raised platform. 19. Looked older. Life can do that. Her name was Alora Calloway. Her dress had belonged to her mother once. It hung loose now, color gone to a tired yellow at the collar, seams thin as breath where hands had scrubbed and rinsed 100 times. A bonnet shadowed her eyes, but not enough to hide the purple cloud along her jaw. She didn't cry, didn't beg. She stood quiet, as if some piece of her had already walked out and left the rest behind to finish what the day required. The auction man had a voice like a whip crack. He talked fast, slick with sweat, grinning the way a knife might grin if knives cared about money. He called her unclaimed, called her other things no man should say about any soul. He lifted his arm and set a start price, like he was haggling for a mule. 3 silver, boots shifted, spurs clicked, wanton hunger pressed against the walls. Then a voice came from the back, low, even. 3. The barn went quiet, heads turned. Out of the shadows stepped a tall man in a long coat the color of road dust, hat brim low, no smile on him, no leer. He moved slow, a boot length at a time, the floor creaking like it respected him. When he reached the platform, he set 3 coins in the seller's palm. They sounded heavy for their size. "I claim nothing," he said, and those words stayed hanging in the air longer than smoke. The seller hesitated, like the joke had slipped past him. Men shifted, not sure what they were watching yet. The tall man, folks called him Cole Jarrett, though some put a winter edge on it and said cold, stepped beside the girl and did a thing none of them expected. He went to one knee. Dust rose around his leg. The horses stilled. Even the rafters seemed to listen. Alora looked down at him, breathing thin. He'd reached for the leather straps at her boots. The buckles were cracked and stiff. His hands were rough from work, but careful the way a man handles something he knows is not his. He untied each strap, one and then the other, slid the boots free and set them beside her bare feet like he was placing them on holy ground. "You don't belong to them," he said, voice steady as a fence post. "And you don't belong to me. I only paid the toll so monsters wouldn't speak for you." Her knees shook. Understanding came slow, the way a thaw comes. First a drip, then a trickle. Something long buried shifted inside her and listened. He rose, took off his coat, the wide, weathered one that had held 100 miles of dust, and laid it around her shoulders so the weight of it felt like shelter, not burden. "Door's there, Ma," he said, nodding toward the light. "You walk out if you want. That's the whole of it." Then he turned his back on the money, on the eyes, on the barn, and started for those wide doors. No one moved to stop him. Men looked at their hands, looked at their boots. The seller cleared his throat and swallowed whatever speech he'd had ready. Alora stood on that platform the way a deer stands at a river, trying to decide if water is friend or trap. The coat smelled of pine smoke and saddle oil. It felt like something honest. She stepped down, Not because she was told, but because for once, nobody told her anything. She followed the tall man into the cooling evening. Outside, the light was different, soft and orange, sliding down the ridge like honey. The air remembered how to breathe. A wagon waited by the fence, gray with miles. He climbed to the driver's plank and gathered the lines. "You ridin'?" he asked without turning. She looked back at the open barn where faces still hovered in the shadows. Then she climbed up and sat beside him, coat wrapped close. The team leaned into the traces, and the wheels began their creaking talk. Hooves beat a steady time on the road. They traveled a long while without words. Far off, thunder muttered among the mountains. She flinched. He eased the team without comment, letting quiet be the bandage it was. "There's a cabin not far," he said at last. "Good fire. You can rest there if it pleases you." They left the road for a narrow track that wound into pines made black by the coming night. When they stopped, a small house stood with its chimney breathing thin smoke and a window showing warm light like a lantern cupped in a hand. He stepped down first, opened the door, and stood aside. Warm inside, no one makes you cross that threshold. Alora looked at the dark around them, then at the square of light. Fear and hope both tugged. She went in. The hearth burned steady. The place smelled of bread and resin. Tin cups hung along a beam. A table sat, honest and plain. He poured hot water from a kettle into one of those cups, set it where she could see it was meant for her, and tore a heel of bread for the plate. "There's stew if you want it. Blanket there by the chair." Her hands clutched the coat tight. "Why?" she asked, the word raw at the edges. He didn't hurry to answer. "Because this is a house with no locks," he said, and it wasn't a riddle so much as a promise. She ate slow at first, then faster, heat stinging her tongue, tears stinging her eyes for reasons that were not about onions. "Your name?" she asked, voice small but standing on its own feet. "Cole Jarrett." "Alora," she said. "Good name." He meant it. Night settled deep. He set another blanket near the fire and pointed toward the bed. "You take that," he said. "I'll keep the chair." "I don't want to be touched," she managed. He nodded once. "Then I won't touch what isn't offered." Something in her spine unwound. The breath she took felt like the first real one of the day. She lay on the rug by the fire instead, because choice had a sweetness she'd never tasted. Outside, wind braided itself through the pines. Inside, flame light walked the log walls and made small shadows dance. He sat quiet, eyes on the coals, the set of his shoulders saying he'd hold that watch all night if he had to. 3 silver lay in the seller's hand back in town, but the weight that mattered was here, and it wasn't price. It was care. Before sleep pulled her under, Alora looked at the door. No latch bar, no key. She closed her eyes and, for the first time since childhood, dreamed without running. And that, friends, is how the night began to change the rest of their lives. Morning came soft, like someone lifting a quilt and letting in the day an inch at a time. The stove had gone to embers, but the room still kept last night's warmth. Alora woke to the quiet scrape of a chair and the scent of coffee rising dark and clean. Her cheek had pressed a pattern of the rug into her skin. It made her smile before she remembered why smiling had grown scarce. Cole stood by the stove, sleeves rolled, forearms crossed with old work. He tipped the kettle, and the tin mug filled slow. "Sugar's near empty," he said, "but the coffee's strong." She sat up, pulled the coat around her shoulders, and took the cup. It burned the right way, steadying. "You keep a lonely house," she said, trying the shape of small talk like a new pair of shoes. "Lonely's quieter than trouble," he answered, "but it knows how to listen." He set a bowl by the stove, stirred something thick that smelled of onions, beans, and meat that had learned patience. "You can wash up there," he added, nodding at a basin on a stand. "Towel's clean." Alora crossed the room slow. Her bare feet learned the floorboard map. Nail heads, a knot here, a soft plank there where years had gone easy. She washed at the basin, the water cold enough to bring the world into focus. In the scratched oval of a small looking glass, she counted the evidences the past had left on her skin. Bruise yellowed at the jaw, a line on her cheek the color of a whisper. She'd touched none of it. She only raised her chin and blinked and kept standing. When she turned, Cole was setting 2 spoons on the table. "Eat," he said. "Then if you choose to leave, I'll hitch the team. If you choose to stay, we'll set a few rules so the house stays kind." "Rules?" She tensed without meaning to. "Not the kind you've known," he said gentle. "Plain ones. No reaching past what a person's offered. No asking about scars unless a body starts the telling. No locking doors. No shouting in this room. And if fear speaks, we listen to it, but we don't let it steer." Her mouth twitched at that last. "You talk like a pastor sometimes." He grinned. "Small, quick, gone. I've been accused of worse." They ate with the careful quiet of strangers who didn't want to scare away whatever peace had come to sit with them. After a while, she set down her spoon. "What made you kneel?" she asked. He rested his own spoon, and his gaze settled somewhere between steam and memory. "A long time back," he said. "A woman helped me breathe when I'd forgot how. She set a chair by a fire like this and said I didn't have to earn my seat. That sort of gift makes you want to pass it along." "You loved her?" "Yes," he said, no drama to it. "Love didn't make us last, but it taught me the shape of a good thing." She nodded, as if she'd been given a tool and wasn't yet sure where it fit in her hands. "I don't want to owe you," she said. "You don't," he answered, easy as a door swinging open. "You can pay in breadcrumbs left for the birds, or in leaving this place better for having sat in it. That's good currency here." She breathed out a sound that might one day grow up to be a laugh. After the meal, he set a bucket by the door. "I'll carry from the creek," he said, "if you don't fancy going outside yet. If you do, the sky's worth seeing. Sun's decided to show off some." She thought on it, then slipped her feet into the boots he'd set by the rug last night. She reached for the laces and stopped. "They feel like someone else's life, she whispered. "Barefoot's allowed," he said. She left them on the floor and followed him out into the morning. The world had been washed while they slept. The sky wore that pale blue that comes after rain moves on. Pines dripped. A jay scolded the day for starting late. The creek ran clear, talking to itself over stone. She stood with her toes in damp grass, the cold reaching up like a promise that everything could start new if given half a chance. "Cabin's yours as long as you want it," Cole said, lowering the bucket to fill. "I ride out most days to cut timber or mend fence for folks up valley. There's bread and beans and coffee enough. If you prefer quiet, the quiet here's real. If you prefer voices, mine's plain. I won't crowd you." She watched the water climb the bucket sides. "Do people come here?" Not many, he said. I keep to edges. Edges are where the wind lives, she murmured, surprised to hear herself confess anything at all. That it is. They carried the bucket back together, his hand on the iron handle, hers on the bale so the weight was shared. Inside, he set it by the basin and handed her a clean cup. She dipped, drank, and began to feel like the house knew her name. She explored then, not the heavy way of searching, but the light way of seeing. A shelf held 4 books, Psalms, a trail journal with blank pages, a dog-eared almanac, and a book of birds with sketches clipped from a newspaper. On the mantel lay a little carving of a hawk mid-turn, wings pulled in, talons reaching. It had been shaped with a knife in endless patience. She touched its back with one finger. You carve, she said. When the dark wants noise, he answered. Wood remembers being a tree. It listens. She set the bird down, like she feared to startle it. May I write in that empty journal? It was waiting for someone, he said. Maybe it was you. By afternoon, the sky hardened into blue, and the ground steamed where the sun found it. She braided her hair with hands that shook at first, then steadied. She asked for a needle and thread and mended the pocket of his long coat where it had come loose from carrying too much road. He washed the tin plates and set them to dry on a towel striped with red. When the light went amber and the pines drew long shadows across the clearing, a sound came thin from the trail. Hooves, quick and light as a deer's, and a small laugh that carried like a bell trying to be brave. Alora turned toward the doorway. Cole didn't move fast, but something in him came to attention, like an old habit standing up straight. From the trees, a boy swung into view, atop a pony with a mane wild as a broom. He couldn't have been more than 6. He wore a hat 2 sizes too big and a grin exactly right. He waved like he was signaling ships at sea. Evening, Cole, he called, voice high and full of the day. Cole took off his hat. Respect, pure and simple. Evening, Caleb. The boy saw Laura then, and his smile shifted to something softer, curious, and careful all at once. He tipped his hat with more grace than many men twice his age. Well now, he said to him, did the wind bring you here? Laura opened her mouth, found no words right away, and closed it again. She felt the floor tilt, not with fear, but with the sudden knowledge that this quiet house held more stories than she guessed. And just like that, the day took a turn she hadn't seen coming. Caleb slid off his pony with the kind of confidence only small boys and wild things are born knowing. His boots sank into the damp ground, and he brushed dust from his pants with a quick swipe. Pa sent me to return your saw, he said, holding out a hand-sized blade that glinted where the sun touched its teeth. Said you need it for mending the fence up by the north ridge. Cole nodded. Tell your pa I'm obliged. He reached for the saw, but Caleb kept his grip a second longer, eyes narrowing just a little toward Alora. You gonna tell me who she is? The boy asked, the words plain, but not rude. Alora half smiled, though it trembled at the edges. Someone passing through, she said, not sure whether that was lie or truth. Cole rested a hand on the boy's shoulder. She's a guest, he said. That's all anyone needs to know. Caleb's face softened. He nodded once, satisfied enough. Guests get cookies, he said, and with the solemnity of a preacher, he dug into his coat pocket and handed her 2 small pieces wrapped in paper. Ma baked 'em yesterday. The paper held cinnamon and sugar in every fold. Alora's eyes stung before she could stop it. Thank you, she whispered. The words came out small, but warm. The boy studied her for a long beat. Then, as if sensing that was enough for one meeting, he gave his pony a pat and turned to Cole. Pa says there's a storm moving down from the pass. Best stack wood tonight. We'll be ready, Cole said. Ride safe, son. Caleb's grin came back. He swung onto his pony and tugged at the reins. Bye, Miss Allure, he said, then rode off, laughter echoing against the trees until it vanished into the pines. Silence stretched a while after. Allura still held the cookies, one in each hand, afraid that moving might break whatever gentle thing had passed between them. Boy's got more sense than most men I've known, Cole said quietly. She nodded. He's good. Kind. His folks lost a lot, he said. Same as most around here, he knows kindness is a seed you water even when rain's scarce. The wind came up, bending the pine tips and rattling needles against the cabin roof. Cole looked toward the ridge, reading the weather like a map. Storm will hit by nightfall, he said. Help me bring the firewood closer. They worked side by side as clouds stacked thick over the valley. He lifted the heavy logs. She carried the kindling. The scent of resin filled the air, sharp and clean. Every so often he'd glance her way, making sure the labor didn't wear her down. She noticed and said nothing, just kept working. When thunder rolled, it wasn't loud yet, just a warning. He turned to her, voice calm but firm. We'll pull the wagon under the lean-to, else it'll drown. Rain began as a fine mist, then thickened quick. They hurried, mud slick underfoot. She slipped once, her hand catching the edge of the wagon before she could fall. Cole's arm shot out, steadying her without grabbing tight. You all right? She nodded, heart thudding. Yes, just forgot the ground's not steady. He met her eyes. It never is, he said softly. That's why we walk slow. When the work was done, they ducked inside. The storm hit proper then. Rain lashing the roof, wind moaning through cracks. He lit 2 lanterns, their glow pushing shadows back, but never all the way out. Allura sat near the hearth, brushing damp hair from her face. Cole hung his coat on a peg and knelt to stir the fire, coaxing flame from stubborn coals. For a long while, they listened to the storm's talk. Then she spoke, her voice barely above it. I used to think storms were punishments, like the sky reminded me who was small. He looked up, face softened by the fire's dance. Maybe they're just the world's way of washing itself clean. She turned that over, rolling the thought through her mind like a stone in a river. You talk like the land's alive. It is, he said. Always has been. We just forget to listen. The crackle of the fire filled the space his words might have taken. She found herself watching his hands, the way they moved with patience. Never hurry, never force. They were hands that could break or build and knew the difference. After a while, he spoke again. There's stew left from last night. Hungry. A little, she said, though her stomach had been a hollow drum since morning. He ladled some into a bowl and handed it over. She took it, fingers brushing his for a heartbeat. Enough to send warmth through her arm that had nothing to do with the food. She ate slow, savoring the quiet more than the taste. When she finished, he leaned back in his chair. If the roof leaks, there's a pail by the wall, he said, but she holds fine most times. How long have you lived here? She asked. 4 winters, maybe 5. Hard to keep count when days all wear the same coat. Don't you ever get tired of the quiet? He smiled a little. The The quiet's never empty if you listen hard enough. Outside, thunder grumbled like an old man talking to himself. The window pane shook. She drew the blanket tighter. "Cole," she said after a long pause, "what would you have done if I hadn't followed you out of that barn?" He looked at her fully then, no dodge in his eyes. "Would have left a trail easy to read. Someone always needs a road to freedom, and I reckon I could have been that road for a mile or two." Something heavy and good landed in her chest. She swallowed it down and said, "I didn't follow 'cause I trusted you. I followed 'cause I was too scared to stay." "That's reason enough," he said. "Fear'll move you same as hope, sometimes even faster." Rain hammered harder now, drowning out the rest of the world. She looked toward the door, still no lock, still open to wind and chance. "You ever worry someone might come through that door uninvited?" "I worry, Ma," I said, "but I'd rather greet a man face to face than bar the door and live afraid." She nodded slowly, understanding more of him with each word. "You sound like you've been both hunter and hunted." "Most men out here have," he said. "The question is, which one do you want to be when the light goes out?" She had no answer. Not yet. Lightning flashed, and for a breath the cabin was bright as noon. She saw the lines in his face then, the years carved there not by bitterness, but by endurance. He looked away first, giving her the space to breathe again. The storm began to ease near midnight. Rain softened into a whisper. She yawned, surprising herself. "Guess I'm more tired than I thought." "Go on," he said. "The chair'll do for me." She lay down on the rug again, watching the last embers collapse into ash. "Cole," she murmured, "thank you for not asking what happened before." He didn't look up from the fire. "You'll tell it when it turns into a story instead of a wound." Her eyes closed on that sentence. Outside, the wind wandered off down the valley, and the house exhaled. Safe for now. But before the night was over, danger from her old life would remember her name, and it was already making its way through the rain. By the next dawn, the sky had turned a soft gray that promised more rain, but not quite yet. Cole was already outside splitting wood, the axe rising and falling in slow rhythm. Each strike echoed through the clearing, steady as a heart that had learned patience. Inside, Alora stirred the coals back to life and poured water into the kettle. She felt rested in a way that didn't come from sleep. It came from safety, the rare kind that doesn't ask for anything in return. She stepped out onto the porch, shawl wrapped around her shoulders. The world still smelled like wet pine and smoke. "Coffee's ready," she called. Cole paused mid-swing, leaning on the axe handle. "That's the finest sound I've heard all morning," he said, walking over. His boots left prints dark as ink on the damp earth. He took the cup she handed him and nodded his thanks before taking a long sip. "You make it stronger than I do." "Guess I needed it stronger," she said. Her smile held steady this time. He smiled back, small, real. "Strong's good, long as it doesn't burn." They sat on the porch steps, the quiet stretching easy between them. Birds began their morning talk in the trees, and for a while, that was all the world there was. But peace in the West was always a borrowed thing, never owned. From the trail came the faint clatter of hooves. Cole's head lifted just enough. He listened, eyes narrowing the way a man does when he knows too much about trouble. "That ain't Caleb," he said quietly. Alora's hand went cold around her cup. "How do you know?" "He rides light. 2 beats faster. This one's heavier, and there's more than one set. He stood, set the cup aside, and stepped off the porch. "Get inside," he said, voice even but carrying weight. She obeyed without question, watching through the window as 3 riders appeared on the curve of the trail. Their coats were dark, hats pulled low, faces hidden under dust and distance. They didn't ride fast. They didn't have to. Trouble rarely hurries when it's sure of itself. Cole walked to meet them halfway down the path, his hand nowhere near his holster, but close enough that any fool would think twice. The lead rider, a thick man with a scar running across his beard, reined in first. "Morning," he droned, though it came out more like mockery. "You got yourself a visitor lately, Mr. Jarrett?" Cole's eyes stayed calm. "Cabin seen a few birds, a boy in the wind. Which one are you asking about?" The man spat to the side. "I'm asking about the girl you bought for 3 silver yesterday." The world seemed to still around. Those words, even the trees stopped their talk. "She ain't property," Cole said slow and flat, "and she ain't yours to come claim." The man chuckled low. "Mean. You misunderstand. She was spoken for. That sale weren't official. The fella who runs the auction wants her back." Cole's gaze didn't move. "You tell your boss he sold his last soul yesterday." The man's hand drifted toward his belt. "You sure about that, friend?" Cole's tone stayed calm, but his body went still, the way a mountain goes still before it sheds rock. "I ain't your friend, and you best be on your way before you find out why quiet men shouldn't be pushed." For a breath, it hung in balance. Then the lead rider smirked. "Suit yourself. We'll be back by sundown, maybe with more company. Ain't no woman worth dying over, cowboy." Cole didn't answer. He just watched them turn and ride off down the trail, hooves throwing mud behind them. When they vanished, he went back to the porch, sat down, and ran a hand across his jaw. The coffee had gone cold. Alora came to the door, pale but standing tall. "They came for me. They came for what they think they own," he said. "Difference matters." Her throat tightened. "You shouldn't have to fight my fight." He looked up at her. "Ain't yours alone anymore." Inside, he began gathering things without hurry, checking the rifle by the door, stacking fresh wood in the hearth, placing water and bread on the table. She watched him, hands fisted in her skirt. "I can leave," she said. "If I go now, they'll follow me, not you." He shook his head. "They'd find you before dark. Wolves don't quit when blood's on the trail." Her breath hitched. "Then what do we do?" "We get ready," he said simply. "You know how to use a gun." She hesitated. "My pa taught me before he passed. Said it's like telling the world you mean to be left alone." Cole nodded. "Smart man." He handed her his spare revolver, the metal cold and heavy in her palm. "Don't shoot unless you must, but if you must, breathe out first." Hours passed in a quiet that wasn't peace, but preparation. The sky darkened again, and thunder mumbled somewhere beyond the ridge. Alora loaded cartridges with shaking hands while Cole checked the door hinges, the windows, the rifle sights. When he caught her watching him, he said softly, "Storm will mask the sound of hooves. That's in our favor. What if they bring more? Then they best bring their own coffins." His words weren't loud, but they had the weight of truth. By afternoon, rain began again, thin, cold, unrelenting. The two of them sat by the window waiting. The silence between thunderclaps carried all the unsaid things: fear, gratitude, and something deeper neither dared name. When the first shadow moved through the trees, Cole rose. "Stay here, Rip," he said. But Alora stood too, revolver steady now in her hands. "You said this house had no locks. Then don't expect me to hide." He looked at her, really looked, and for the first time she saw respect in his eyes, a quiet recognition between equals. "All right," he said, "we stand together then." The door swung open to the storm's gray breath. The wind howled through, carrying the smell of wet soil and gun oil. Outside, the riders came again, 3 shapes against the mist, one holding a rifle low across his saddle. Cole stepped forward. Alora took her place at his side. "Evening, boys," Cole said, his voice calm as the rain. "You sure you want to test your luck twice in one day?" The leader sneered. "Ain't luck we're counting on, cowboy. It's numbers." The next sound came quick. Thunder, rifle crack, and echo all mixed together. Cole fired once. The shot true, splitting the silence wide open. One rider fell, the others turned, spooked by the storm's rage and the sharpness of his aim. Horses reared, mud flew, and within moments they were gone into the rain. The quiet afterward was louder than the gunfire had been. Cole lowered the rifle, chest rising slow. Alora's hands trembled around the revolver, but she didn't drop it. "You all right?" he asked. She nodded, tears mixing with the rain. "I didn't shoot," she said. "Didn't have to." "Good," he murmured. "You don't win a thing by pulling a trigger if you can help it." They stood in the doorway, the storm washing the blood from the trail, the smell of gunpowder fading into wet earth. Alora looked at him, her heart full of something fierce and unspoken. "They'll tell stories about you," she said. He shook his head. "Stories don't matter much. What matters is you can sleep tonight without wondering whose boots are outside your door." She stepped closer, voice low. "And what about you?" He met her eyes. "I stopped sleeping easy a long time ago, but that's my choice." Lightning flickered, painting their faces for a heartbeat before darkness folded over them again. And though the danger had passed, neither of them knew that the hardest part wasn't the gunfire. It was what came after, when the heart tried to understand what it was beating for. By the next morning, the valley wore silence like a fresh blanket. Mist drifted low across the meadow, curling around the fence posts and catching the pale light of dawn. The storm had scoured everything clean. The air, the earth, maybe even a little piece of both their hearts. Cole stood out back by the split rail fence, his hands resting on the top rail. A hawk circled high above, its cry cutting through the stillness. He'd buried the man who fell deep under a pine tree at the edge of the ridge without words or markers. Out here where the land kept its own kind of record. Inside the cabin, Alora watched him through the window. His shirt clung damp to his shoulders, the morning chill turning his breath white. He looked worn and steady all at once, like a mountain after lightning, scarred, but still standing. She stepped outside, barefoot, on the wet grass, coat pulled tight. "You didn't have to dig that grave alone," she said softly. Cole turned, slow. "Ain't right for you to touch the past I made." She studied him. "Maybe it's time you let someone help carry it." He smiled faintly, a line of warmth behind the beard shadow. You got a stubborn way of being kind, Miss Alora." "I learned it from a man who said no locks belong on doors," she replied. He chuckled, low and rough, the sound of it found something inside her that hadn't been touched in years. "Coffee's ready," he said. "Well, best we drink it before it goes bitter." They went inside together. The fire burned bright, turning the walls golden. She poured 2 cups and sat across from him at the table. For a time, they said nothing. Silence wasn't empty anymore. It was full of what didn't need saying. Finally, she set her cup down. "What happens now?" He looked toward the window. "You could ride east. Rivertown's about 2 days if the trail stays dry. There's a church there that helps folks start fresh, or..." He paused. "You could stay till spring. Help me mend the fence line, plant a little garden by the shed." Her heart quickened. "And after spring?" He shrugged. "After spring, we'll ask the land what it wants." She smiled then, the kind that changes a whole face. "I like that," she whispered. A knock came at the door. Light, quick. Cole rose, hand near the rifle, though his face stayed calm. The door opened just enough for a small voice to slip through. "It's me." Caleb peeked in, dripping rain and grinning wide. "Ma sent biscuits." Cole laughed, tension easing. "You're a brave messenger riding in this weather." The boy shrugged proud. "Ain't nothing but drizzle. Ma says it builds character." Alora took the bundle from him, warm and smelling of butter. "Tell your mama thank you kindly," she said. Caleb's eyes darted to her. "You stayin', Miss Alora?" She hesitated, then smiled. "Seems I might for a spell." "Good," he said, pleased. "Cabin's too quiet for just him." He nodded toward Cole. "Man talks to his horses more than people." Cole feigned a glare. "Get on, before I put you to work stacking logs." The boy laughed, tipped his hat, and vanished back into the mist. When the door closed, the world felt warmer somehow. Cole sat again, elbows on his knees. "You scared?" he asked quietly. Alora thought about it, eyes on the fire. "A little," she admitted, "but not the way I was. It's a different kind now. The kind that comes before something good." He nodded. "So fear and hope wear the same boots sometimes. Hard to tell them apart till they've walked a mile." She looked at him then, truly looked, at the way the light softened his face, the steadiness in his eyes. "You paid 3 silver, she said, "but you gave more than you ever owed." He leaned back, shaking his head. "Didn't buy freedom, Alora. Just made sure you had a door to walk through." Tears pricked her eyes, but she didn't turn away. "Then maybe I'll spend my days keeping that door open for someone else." "That'd be a fine way to live," he said. The fire popped, throwing sparks like stars between them. Outside, the rain eased to a whisper. The world felt slow again. Right again. Alora stood and crossed to the shelf. She took the small wooden hawk from its place, tracing the carved feathers with her thumb. "You said wood remembers being a tree," she murmured. He nodded. "It remembers standing tall even after the wind tries to break it." She looked at him, her voice barely above the fire's hum. "Then maybe I'll keep this as a reminder." "It's yours," he said, "always was." She set it gently back on the mantel. "No," she said, smiling through the tears. "It belongs right here." They stood there a while, both quiet, both steady in the glow. Later, as evening crept in and the first stars began to burn through the clearing sky, Cole stepped outside. The air was sharp, alive with pine and distant thunder rolling itself toward another valley. Alora followed, standing beside him. He tilted his hat back, watching the horizon. "Storm's moving on," he said. "Guess we are too," she answered. He turned toward her. The look they shared didn't need words. There was promise in it, not of forever, but of choosing each dawn as it came. He reached out then, slow enough for her to see every thought behind it. She met his hand halfway. Their fingers brushed, then settled, quiet and sure. The sky broke open above them, streaked with the red-gold light of sunset. The prairie wind carried the scent of wet earth and new beginnings. For a long moment, neither spoke. The world didn't need explaining. And as the day slipped into night, the only sound left was the whisper of the wind moving through the pines, carrying the story of a cowboy, a girl, and the 3 silver coins that bought her freedom, but cost him his heart.